Imagine yourself having a conversation with a coworker, or if you're still in school, with a classmate. This individual happens to invite you to a holiday party. Your immediate thought or response is almost certainly no. But what if this coworker or classmate goes on to say that this party isn't actually a celebration of that particular holiday, but merely a gathering to enjoy each other and have a good time? What would you say now? Would you recognize their attempt to mask the true reason for the celebration, or would you allow yourself to be convinced otherwise? Well, let us now consider 3 simple principles that we can all remember to help guide us in connection with celebrations. To examine the first principle, we can start by taking our Bibles and flipping to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 and 17. And in these following verses, the Apostle Paul helps us to acknowledge that if a holiday or celebration is somehow linked to other gods other than Jehovah, the only true God, it is opposing to our beliefs, and we take no part in this. Once again, it's 2 Corinthians 6, verse 14 and 17. It says, "Do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers. For what fellowship do righteousness and lawlessness have? Or what sharing does light have with darkness?" And 17. "Therefore, get out from among them and separate yourselves," said Jehovah, "and quit touching the unclean, and I will take you in." Jehovah allows us to clearly see in the scriptures we just read that regardless if a worldly celebration is well known for any religious matters or not, we can see that Jehovah wants us to be no part of this. Secondly, when considering celebrations, we can ask ourselves, does our love for Jehovah make us rejoice in true worship? As many of us know, Jehovah's principal quality is that of love. In the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 13 and verse 6, we can better understand how to reciprocate that love that Jehovah has shown to us. If you could join me once again in 1 Corinthians, that's chapter 13 this time, in verse 6, we can see how our love and desire to please Jehovah can help to cultivate the right attitude when rejecting worldly celebrations. That's 13:6. "It does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth." So a person who truly loves Jehovah is not resentful for having shunned these practices that, although may invoke an emotional response or honor false gods. Our genuine love for Jehovah can be shared by rejoicing in the choices that promote the truth. If we cultivate an attitude that makes our heart rejoice in righteousness, we will be better equipped to reject these worldly celebrations. Now, say your coworker or classmate tried to further reiterate that the celebration is really innocent and not that bad at all. They may even agree that the celebration does originate with unscriptural and pagan roots. However, they explain that is not the present-day basis for that celebration. But a third and final principle that should guide us in what we have learned from Jehovah's Word, the Bible, and what his view is on the matter. We have one last example to consider that Moses recorded in Exodus 32 in verse 4 through 10. We're not going to read all of it because it's kind of long. But in these verses over here, we see that Jehovah punished the Israelites for incorporating pagan customs with true religion. So starting in verse 4, we see how the Israelites formed a statue of a golden calf and began calling it God. Now in the latter part of 5, it reads, "There's a festival to Jehovah tomorrow." Now we can skip to 10, verse 10, and the first part reads, "So now let me be, that my anger may blaze against them, and I may exterminate them." If you're familiar with this account, you remember that the Israelites adopted an Egyptian religious practice and gave it a new name, which in verse 5 calls it a festival to Jehovah. We can clearly see the anger that Jehovah showed towards the Israelites in verse 10 when he said his anger blazed against them. And today we also see the many practices associated with religion that originate from pagan practices. So should we disregard Jehovah's view of things? Of course not. In conclusion, we can keep in mind, in order to continually follow the principles laid out in regards to celebration. The October 1st, 2005 Watchtower cites Revelation 18:4 and 5 by stating that, with good reason, the Bible urges people everywhere to get out of her, if you do not want to share with her in her sins. We now know that this involves more than just severing any ties with false religions. Babylonish influence is present in many popular celebrations and customs. It is vital that both in our actions and in the desire of our heart, we are guided by Bible's principle in regards to celebrations.